Yay. Here we are. It's Thursday. And hi, Mama. And today is about awakening our senses. And I'm stirring some chocolate protein into what I call a paste. It's a soupy paste. I mean, we are in sacred sips, so it would make sense that it's soupy. It's kind of a sip off the spoon, if you will. And because I am a chocolate cookie, I'm going to add some chocolate chips, some organic chocolate chips, because why not? It's snack time. The protein I'm using is by a company called Mikuna. It is an incredible plant-based protein that is lectin-free. So it doesn't give you that bloat, easy to digest, zero inflammation. And that's part of what I want to get into today in the awakening, the ascension, right? As we ascend, in awakening the senses, it's really important to look at our relationship with food and food combining. Food combining is such a huge issue um, for so many people. I find it is the most challenging conversation over the years with clients. There are very few clients that I've had over the years, and I've had thousands, that can immediately tackle it. And usually the ones that do, and I can count on one hand who it's been out of thousands, it's because they've been in extreme pain and are willing to do whatever it takes, right? It's a slow progression into awakening the senses and what that looks and feels like, because sometimes we're so used to something that we think that feeling or state of being is normal, especially if it's not. There's no pain associated with it or discomfort, right? So our relationship with food combining becomes a challenging conversation because we're touching on tradition. Tradition is about not just our culture in the world, but our family, right? How we come and commune with food and people. And that's a big conversation in and of itself. How we commune with food, our relationship with food as a whole, and then our relationship with food in communal settings, our relationship with food in private, our relationship with food around celebration, our relationship with food around punishment, um, and the stories that we have attached to these various relationships that we have created or have been created for us through childhood into adulthood. Food combining is biochemistry, so it's very clear cut. It's very, very clear cut. And I find that this is a really important baseline of communication as we talk about cellular health and what does it mean to truly awaken the senses in the body and in the mind. What does it really mean to remove inflammation at the root, right? What does that look like? There's no thing we need to take most of the time to get rid of inflammation. It's more about what we need to take away, right? Which, again, is a conversation about relationships. And this is where I think, this whole food piece, it's so fascinating. I don't think we need to eat at all to the degree that we've been taught we need to consume calories. I think I know at this stage of my life, I mean, I've been deep diving our relationship with food for over 20 years at this point. And I've studied researched, worked with had close relationships with people who have done intentional fasting and deep, heavy cleansing. And there's something that happens to not just your physical body, but your emotional body and your spiritual body when you create the space to let go and allow the body to be light and step into that space of feeling. And that can be a lot. But this is where the senses really come alive. We are bogged down by so much pollution, noise pollution, particles in the air, our food being poisoned, radio and microwave frequencies at us all day long, right? Like the body is combating on a regular basis so many things. And one of the things that we have absolute control over is what we put in our mouth. And not only that, we have absolute control on how we choose to relate to what we put in our mouth. So that should feel empowering. While it may be challenging, it's ultimately very empowering because you realize, once again, you are the creator of your universe, of your world. You are the architect in every capacity, body, mind, and soul, right? So the simplicity of biochemistry, right, and the comprehension of what it means to properly food combine. I will drop the food combining chart in the resources section so that you can have a look at that. And it is very complex. You do not need to get that nuanced. I really, if you're looking at awakening the senses, kind of awakening the body, it's spring. Let's get into elimination, right? Let's eliminate all the things that no longer work for us. And how can we shift our relationship with consumption, right? What do we consume? How are we consuming? What do you really need to consume in order to operate at your highest level? Is it you need to consume a lot, or is it that you need to consume uber high quality in small amounts, right? Or is it something in between? Are you sedentary or are you highly active? All of these nuances play a role, just like the food combining chart is very nuanced. The only thing I want you to really take a moment to look at is the foundation or the fundamentals of protein and starchy carbs. If you even just started there and then took your fruit and kept your fruit alone by itself, either first thing in the morning or later on, late morning, depending on, again, lifestyle. These pieces are important and they do play a role. So there's a lot that goes into these nuances. But the simplicity of when you have a concentrated protein, whether that is a plant-based protein, a protein powder, right? I'm using mucuna, which is this Andean plant that's super high in protein and has zero lectins. A lectin is a plant poison that can create inflammation in the body. So like pea protein, super, super, super high in lectins. So if you were eating a plant-based protein powder and the first ingredient is pea protein and you're wondering why you're getting bloated, the pea protein, the brown rice protein, which is interesting because brown rice in and of itself is a starchy carb. And so what is the process that they have to go through in order to make it a protein? But brown rice is extremely high in arsenic and lectins. So you don't want to eat that. The Asian culture has it right in that white rice is actually almost completely lectin free. It's naturally gluten free. So if you're going to go rice, I would go white rice, jasmine rice, things like that. But the brown rice proteins, the pea proteins, those are very inflammatory. So if you're going plant-based, that is something that you want to consider. So mucuna is low in lectins, but it is a protein, which means any concentrated protein, whether it be a plant-based protein, so a protein powder, all the way to tofu, to legumes, seeds, nuts, or animal. Okay, and that's going to be, an egg is an animal protein. It's an organ. It is not dairy. It is an organ. And then you're looking at, chicken, meat, all of that. Those are all concentrated forms of protein. A concentrated carbohydrate is going to be anything that is a starchy carb. We're looking at all kinds of rices, white or brown, it doesn't matter. There is a nuance there, but I'll tell you that in a minute. Potatoes, pastas, baked goods, anything along those lines. I might be forgetting something, but anything along those lines is what is a starchy carb, okay? Now, there's gray areas in between this, like an avocado is a fatty protein, but it's a fruit. And then coconut is a fatty protein. And then you have, what was I going to say? Oh, wild rice. The long grain black seed wild rice is actually a seed. It is not a starch or a grain, really. It's a seed. It comes from inside a plant that they have to hand harvest. It's a seed. So that is actually a proteinaceous grain, right? So when I am consuming wild rice, it's the only rice that I can eat that doesn't inflame my body because it's a seed. It's not a grain or a starchy carb. And when cooked properly and it cracks open, you can put it with mushrooms, avocado, you name it. It's delicious. But if you take these two components, the comprehension of what a starchy concentrated carbohydrate is versus a concentrated protein, whether it's plant-based or animal-based, it doesn't matter. A concentrated protein is a concentrated protein, just as a concentrated carbohydrate is a concentrated carbohydrate. No matter what it is what it is, right? You do not want to mix these two. Why? Because that causes major inflammation in the gut. Listen, kids, you're like, oh, but my kids are fine, or I don't feel it, I'm fine. That's great. You might not feel it now, but at some point you will. At some point it shows up. And it shows up because your body over time, right? It's over time, right? Where do you want to live? Do you want to live in the space where your body is with as little inflammation as possible and working optimally? Or do you want to constantly pour into your body things that cause inflammation? And then one day you wake up, because that's how it feels. It feels like one day you wake up and all of a sudden there are so many things wrong. But this has happened over a period of time. Inflammation in the gut starts with bloating, bowel movement issues. It could do with gas. It could do with, what's that thing you get with your throat, and acid reflux, which is actually a lack of proper acid production in the body, acne, headaches, all of these things are caused by inflammation in the body, and they show up differently for everybody. Hormone imbalances, right? So this is why it becomes so nuanced. I was talking to somebody last week, and we were just talking about biochemistry and bio individuality, and in the thousands of protocols I have written up, not one of them is the same. I mean, that is a bold statement. That should really give you insight into how unique each one of us are. And it's not, are you plant-based? Are you a carnivore? Right? That's all BS, right? It's, where are you in your life? what have you done to your body? Like, what has it already had to deal with? Where do you need to go, right? Like, what's happening? How can you support it? And what are your goals? What are your long-term health goals? Right? I'm going to 250. I might be a little crazy, but that's me. I'm going to 250. I got things to do and I don't want to go back. It's my last rodeo in Earth. I ain't coming back to this crystal ball. So I want to make sure I do what I got to do. So I have just got to keep going. Do you see what I'm saying? So where are you? Where do you want to go? All of these determine the nuances of how you choose to imbibe nutrients. Food is information. That's all it is. It's nutrients in form, right? They inform nutrients that inform your body of what it should be doing and how it should be processing. That's all it is. So we really need to start to look at nutrition from that lens and pull away from this emotional landscape of our attachments and get clear, because a diet, a 30-day challenge, all these things, they only go so far because willpower is only going to go so far, because at the end of the day, you're going to hit up against your relationship with that thing, right? And so all of this, because when you look at the food combining chart, when I tell you that it is nuanced and layered, I am not exaggerating. And if you decide, don't take that all on, just don't do it. Look at concentrated carbohydrates and concentrated proteins and look at how you can start to awaken your senses, right? Become aware of your relationship to food, your relationship to your body, what is actually going on inside your body, because it is reflected on the outside. And in order to really get clear and in tune with that, you have to become aware of the nuances. That's just how it goes. Right? So what can you do to really help yourself excel with your health goals? And food combining is the simplest, one of the most profound things you could do for your body. It's totally free. All it requires is you dealing with some of your emotional attachments to these things, these pieces of information, and being willing to travel them, adjust them, right? Readjust them, take a step back from them, let some of them go, right? Try something new on, right? It's just all about, like, the challenge is how you view that relationship. Everything in life is a relationship. Every single thing, which sometimes is really mind bending when you realize that. Like, every single thing is how you relate to it. That's all it is. How do we relate to ourselves, our kids, our family, our loved ones, our partners, our business, our food? It's all a relationship. What can you do to empower yourself to really make lasting change that helps you become more in tune with your physical senses that go beyond the five senses? Because once you start to clear out the inflammation in the physical, you have space to tap into other layers of your being that exist outside of just this flesh, right? And now there's space to tap into the emotional and the spiritual aspects of your being, right? And this is where we get to really have fun and delve into what it means, right, to feel our best and be truly in step with longevity and health on every level. So, Ange, I know you're here with me. Do you have any questions about what I've shared? I love that. Only now am I able to embrace food combining, or rather simplification, by simplifying everything in my life in a new radical way. I love this. Perfect. And I think Ange has a question. She's typing it out, maybe. I'm going to stir my chocolate protein. Again, Mikuna, Mikuna. I recommend getting either the vanilla chocolate one. It's the plain one is pretty earthy, and so unless you're really able to creatively mask that taste in a way that doesn't have you adding a bunch of unnecessary things, then you could go with the plain. I like the vanilla the best, even though I've gotten the chocolate. I'll go back to the vanilla next time. Can Mikuna inspire anxiety? Have you heard that from anyone? Interesting. I have not personally heard that. However, it is a nootropic Mikuna. So, okay, so Angela's asking about Mikuna, which is something different than the protein powder that I just talked about. So Mikuna, Mikuna, is the plant-based protein. And now Angela's asking about Macuna, Macuna, which is also a plant, but it is a plant used to help the body naturally produce L-DOPA. So this is something that works with your nervous system, but also it's really considered a nootropic because it is going to kind of like lion's mane, except lion's mane is a mushroom, Mucuna is a plant. It's actually, I believe, in the legume family. I have not heard that it inspires anxiety. However, again, everybody's different. So if someone is taking Mucuna and you are feeling anxiety, then maybe back off the amount that you're using, right? If you're using 1/4 of a teaspoon, use 1/8 and see if that helps. Traditionally, though, I have seen Mucuna sort of calm the senses, if you will, create more of a calming effect. What it does, I discovered it in when I was researching plant-based alternatives for, I have clients with Parkinsonian diseases, and so Mucuna is amazing for helping the body create the L-DOPA, which helps actually stop the shakes, right? So it will create that calming effect within the body because it's producing L-DOPA. So I have not heard that. I hope that explanation was enough. If you lean towards anxiety, if you're someone who is, yes, anxiety is coming up for loved one. Yeah. Oh, yay. I'm so glad that you're making cacao bevies, and that makes me so happy. Yes, and so if you are like lion's mane, right? It should not produce anxiety. It is meant to actually create focus in the brain. If you are someone who is struggling with anxiety or has struggled with anxiety for years, things that may normally help someone like me create focus and attention, that sharpness, that alertness of the brain could make you feel anxiety, could trigger a response where it feels like now, oh my God, maybe because there's a heightened sense of awareness that produces the anxiety. I'm wondering if it's just, that's my thought, is that the Mucuna or a lion's mane, these things are cordyceps. They all really create a deep focus within the brain. And then if you pair that with something like cacao, which is a delivery system, right? It's going to amplify whatever you put with it. You absolutely might feel such a sense of awareness and energy and focus that just that new feeling in and of itself could trigger anxiety, is how I would express that. But again, everybody's different. So, maybe it does. Maybe it does create that for you, right? I have not experienced it, and I have not had clients experience anxiety with the Mucuna. Having said that, the lion's mane and cordyceps have created anxiety. I think it's more of that there's a trigger in the brain because of the alertness and the focus. And so the feeling, I think, becomes overwhelming. And if there's fear, deep-rooted fear. So this is the other thing, right? When we're taking in information that is awakening the senses, and if we are not used to feeling in those areas, it can trigger fear, right? Because you're like, holy shit, I'm fucking high. Excuse my potty mouth. But you feel high, but you're not. You're just maybe for the first time in a long time, really awake. And that can be scary, right? So you have to take all of these things into consideration. I don't think there's anything to fear, especially when it comes to plants. I mean, unless you're, of course, doing like, what's it called? An entheogen or something like that, I would be a little nervous myself. But my point is that these foods that we're talking about are benign. They're benign. They're not going to harm you. And this is where our relationship to ourself and our body and our emotions really become important when we try on new things that awaken the senses and open us up to new feelings and revelations in the body and in the mind. So, sending much love. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, our office hours, and I look forward to seeing your comments when you're watching the replay as to how this has helped you, what insights it's